Welcome to our second panel discussion of the day, where Sal Rizzo and Richard Russo will be talking about their experiences buying a business. The moderator is Chris Farrell. Chris is a senior economics contributor at Minnesota Public Radio and Marketplace, American Public Media's nationally syndicated public radio business and economic programs. Chris is a columnist for PBS Next Avenue and the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. His most recent book is Purpose and a Paycheck: Finding Meaning, Money, and Happiness in the Second Half of Life. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward to this session. And the theme for this session is starting your entrepreneurship journey by buying a business. And our panelists own and run two very different businesses in extremely different industries. But as entrepreneurs, they also share much in common, including perhaps most importantly, a love of Italian food. So, we probably won't have time to deal with that though. Okay, so Richard Russo is president and CEO of Endomedix, a biosurgical company. Richard is a 30+ year medtech veteran. And Sal, we'll just go by Sal, Rizzo is the owner and CEO of Gustibus Cooking School, and it's housed in Macy's at Herald Square. And just to start off, why don't each of you give us a brief description of your business. You're going to do it much better than I can. And we'll start with you, Richard, and then Sal. Richard?
Okay. Well, we're working with a novel polysaccharide chemistry to develop a device that sprays onto the brain and spinal cord during surgery and controls bleeding.
Wow.
There's nothing that's approved for that at the moment. And this presents the first major innovation in this sector since the standard of care was introduced in 1945. Sal, for you.
Well, first off, I hope you could use that for razor cuts because I always cut my face and it doesn't stop bleeding. So let's go into that. But welcome to Gustibus Cooking School. My name is Sal. I am the owner. We're a 41-year cooking school that we've hosted over 1,500 of the world's greatest chefs that come to Gustibus to do demonstrations in front of our live audience and now virtual. It's an opportunity for the chefs to entertain, inspire, and educate a very discerning group of foodies that love to dine, cook at home, and frequent the restaurants.
So Sal, just to start off, so how did you end up buying the business? I mean, had you had a long time desire to buy the business and then this one came to you, or was it more serendipity?
It was definitely serendipity without the chocolate sauce, like everybody knows about New York City and serendipity. I've always been in food. I knew of Gustibus, but at the point, my husband, who is now a full-time tour operator, was doing tours for Sicily, met the former founder and owner to do a trip for her to Sicily. She and her very famous chef husband took us out to dinner post-trip. We were chatty Cathy's, just talking about food, knowing chefs. I knew chefs from my time at the James Beard Foundation. And she literally slapped my hand and said, "You'd be perfect to buy my business." And I never thought I would do it because I was horrified to even think, I can't buy my own business. What am I've never owned a business before. I've always worked for people. And it was my husband that really encouraged me. And it was 8 months of negotiation. And April 4th, 2008, I bought the school.
So Richard, did someone slap you on the hand and say, you need to buy this business, Endomedix?
Well, let me say the following, that I actually had tried to buy a business right out of school. It was a sausage company, and my father had been in the meatpacking business, so this seemed to be natural, but I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And I went into the medical device business instead. And I had done a couple of ventures, but was not the senior person, the CEO in either of those ventures, but they were successful. And then I was introduced to these guys who had started a company, but really didn't know where they were going or what they had to do. And their problems played right to my strengths. So I didn't buy the business simply. I became a major shareholder, and I did it gradually, step by step by step. So I got a chance to look at the problems in this business and understand the magnitude of the mountain, or I thought I did. It turned out to be bigger than I thought. The magnitude of the mountains in front of me. And so when we talk about purchasing a business, we're really talking about investment of either time and or money and expertise. And doing it gradually gives you a chance to not just jump off into space, so to speak, but also to get a handle on, who are these other people you'd be joining, and what are you inheriting, and is this for you? So I want to put all of that in there.
And I want to ask a follow-up question. I'm going to ask you the same question to you, Sal, but Richard, you said, to your strengths. So, what are your strengths and how do you think about that? Because a lot of us who have been employees or we're working for people, we have job titles. We kind of know what we're good at doing. We can accomplish this, but that's not the same thing as these are my strengths. These are my skills. This is what I am good at, because it may not have a title.
Right. Well, let's separate the idea of skill from what I'll call character strengths or personality strengths for a moment. So I had been successful in the medical device world at getting things through the FDA and having both running clinical trials and getting things through the FDA and other regulatory bodies. So that's always pivotal in a medical product. And I had strategic marketing bent to some extent, or to the extent that's who I really was when you scratch the surface. So I think that you make a very good point in moving this quickly. One should take an inventory of one's accomplishments and failures and write them down on a piece of paper and say, okay, do I feel comfortable about saying that these are my strengths? And were these weaknesses, or these are something I learned from and I'm now strong on those areas? And then go talk to a couple of people who know you. And they'll probably tell you things about yourself that you never knew. It's like talking to a partner, a life partner, and saying, and then finding out that you snore and you didn't.
So Sal, same thing to you. I mean, so you're going to be buying this business, and so what have you learned about your skills, your strengths, and as Richard mentioned, your failures?
Well, I have to say, Richard, and one thing that really touched on me when you said you took time, right? You didn't dive, you paddled, you did the doggy paddle. And for me, I was very fortunate because there was a lot of factors involved. Nobody knew she was selling the business, and nobody could know that we were in a negotiation to buy the business. And we did that purposely for the staff, for the chefs, for everybody, because we didn't want the word to go out there. And once it happened, Arlene, who was the founder, was very dedicated. She started this business for 28 years. She was here every night. So there was a lot of baby steps I had to take, because every night when I bought the business, I made a point that she was there still conducting the classes, still introducing herself, but then introducing me as the new owner. So we started like slowly ripping that Band-Aid. Now you got customers that were like, who's the little punk? Who are you? Chefs who knew me were like, what the hell are you doing here? And I'm like, and other chefs, which there's a very famous celebrity chef that I will not name, but she turned around and said, I ain't coming back here. And she did. And she did next time with me. So it was that way of really going in and doing it very slowly and trying to understand their nuances. But the biggest thing that I remember Arlene telling me at one point, I was so stressed out because I was trying to do things for her. And she sat me down, she said, don't be me, be you. And that was the pinnacle point for me, because she's very different. She's very much of, I'm the huggy, kissy, I want everybody to be in my home. She is not like that. So when I started adapting that philosophy, it became more of my big dinner party that I always wanted to do. It's just a big dinner party with a really famous chef and 55 people and copious amounts of wine and a lot a lot of laughs.
What could go wrong with that? Nothing.
Nothing.
I mean, that sounds great.
They can. But they don't tell you about allergies. You don't have to worry about that.
So I'm curious, Richard, it's a little bit of a sidebar, but how did COVID affect your business? I mean, did you, as a business owner, learn anything during the COVID experience that, you think someone who's thinking about entrepreneurship should file away?
Well, yes. Two big things, maybe three. First of all, if you're going to need money for your business, it's always useful to have personal contact with people so that they already know you and trust you. And I had been in France for 8.5 years, and I came back here, and I didn't have a large Rolodex of people who knew me in the United States. Okay, so that was an issue. But you learn from that if you're going to need assistance, whether it's personal assistance or funds, someone to help back you what you're doing, you really, it's most easy to do when you already have some connections, when people know who you are. The second thing was having a real hard time finding the right type of scientists. Now, we have done a new technology. Everyone likes to talk about new technology. That means that there's nobody else with experience in it. And we're having a real hard time finding those people. And then finally, as I bet you Sal's having a problem getting ingredients and components of your world. We're having a hard time even getting laboratory glassware because that's being made in China. And, boats are not coming over.
Yep.
No.
So supply chain has proven to be a real bugaboo.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sal, same thing to you. I mean, how did you learn from COVID?
Well, first, I remember the day that I decided that the school was going to shut down was March 12th. I don't follow basketball, but we were right across the street from Madison Square Garden when we saw that the NBA was not going to do any more finals and this was getting really serious. We said it will take 2 weeks off, and that 2 weeks turned into 14 months. So after a month staying in my apartment and baking bread and drinking copious amounts of wine that we had, I was like, okay, let's wake up and let's have a come to Jesus moment. And what are we going to do? And it was very serendipitous for me. My first meal out in 2020, April, was with Cedric von Gerichten, whose father is John George von Gerichten, one of the world's, to me, greatest chefs. And I went to his restaurant because we're friends, and he said, "Oh, I'm starting this delivery company." I said, "Well, I'm trying to just do these virtual classes, but I don't want to just do virtual like everybody else. I want the Gustibus is different than every other cooking school. I want to continue to do what we do here and still offer the people, the food." And he said, "Well, let's work together." And that's how it started. And I have to tell you, I mean, COVID was awful for everybody. And I always say, when people say, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, how am I doing? How's the world doing? It's not me. I mean, everybody's affected. But for me, it was a really good eye opener because the things, again, Richard, I don't know about you, but there were certain things that I never thought I would do anything virtual, ever. And now I do.
I should add, we did not go virtual. We're running a, quote, chemistry laboratory, so it's all in person. Luckily enough, we have a very large space, and our organization fit this kind of hand in glove because we had a small dedicated staff and leveraged ourselves through outside consultants, and that survived all of the lockdowns.
So Sal, you bought Gustibus in 2008, right?
Yes.
All right, so we're in 2021. Looking back, what would you advise someone who's thinking about buying a business? That this is the route they think they want to go, but you have now quite a few years to look back on and draw on some experience.
Well, support for me was one big thing because my husband was a very big supporter in me buying it, and he was my biggest advocate. But I believe that if you're going to go into a business that you love and you're passionate about, it really was helpful for me that Arlene stayed on. And she stayed on for many years. I mean, I had her as my consultant for many years because it gave me the opportunity to have a nice transition for many people who knew her, that she still was here to come. They still saw her at certain classes, gave me a night off, and also bounce around ideas. She would help me with creating the schedule, even though it was all my responsibility. It was nice to have that person to look back upon, somebody who had experience, but then take it upon your own self. And I think a second thing for me is I didn't think I had the confidence to do it. I didn't think I had the know-how to do it, but you really do. Like if you like, I held it inside, but when you're in the thick of it, man, you learn by fire, and that's the way I like to learn. Like, right, Richard, like you learn by fire. I mean, I can't, it was amazing that the mistakes the countless number of mistakes I made, but those were all learning lessons.
I'm going to quote somebody else, to invent, you have to experiment. And if you already know what the result is going to be, it's not an experiment.
Yes, it is.
It's not so coming back on what Sal said, taking a look at a business that you feel comfortable with, or you like, or you think you may be able to contribute to, a type of business, then it really is helpful to think out of the box. I'm going to give you an example, bookstores. When I was years and years ago, when I was an undergraduate in Boston, there was a bookstore that had classical guitar in the evenings and served coffee. So they were just doing what McDonald's did much later on, which was to add on, and McDonald's started off as lunch and dinner, and so they added on breakfast, and they started using the same facility for another revenue stream. And if seeing people do that type of thing, now Barnes and Noble does this type of thing. You go into their stores and they have a cafe. But imagine if you were like in a smaller town, you might say, well, I bet you I could add some type of daycare to this to bring in young mothers and young readers. So you take a look at a business and say, and even in medical, this is important kind of thinking. You have to think out of the box to apply a technology a different way. And you think about how you could make a difference. And if you see how you can make a difference, then you begin to have confidence. And
completely.
And then you can go out there a little bit. Doesn't mean that you have to dive out the first window that presents itself.
Absolutely.
But
It's just, Richard, to your point, like how many times I have people telling me, I want to go to cooking school, or I want to open a restaurant. And my first response to them is, have you ever cleaned a grease trap? Have you ever cleaned a grease trap? Because I clean my grease trap, and believe me, if you can't handle it, you ain't going to handle the kitchen. Or do you really want to work 7 days a week, 16 hours a day? I mean, I was fortunate. I've only known food, Richard. You and I come from the same background. Food was embedded in our culture, hospitality. I love it. So I knew not to do anything else. And this just culminates in everything I always wanted, but I still have my weekends. I still have my summers. I mean, like I have the joys of a restaurant without the pressures of the restaurant.
And you could take the same approach, let's say, and I don't wear any jewelry and I don't really get made up, but pretend you were interested. Pretend you're interested in fashion. You say, what else? How could I bring this to a new audience? Or how can I bring it to an audience in a different way? And you would start to develop cosmetics training or whatever for young people and target those people in high school. And suddenly you're offering this group of people that doesn't have an organized way of experimenting and learning how to do things. You're offering them something, but there are people that could be doing this now, but maybe they're not. Maybe there are people doing this and I just don't know because
But Richard, I have to say, I love that you just said that, because I'm waiting to speak to my old high school, which I love my high school. They just opened up a culinary center. And I'm trying to reach the congressman that helps fund it, because I'm like, I need to talk to you. Like, I want to talk to you. I want to be involved in some way, shape, or form to kind of get these kids. And I know those kids are, they're very like that. They don't know what they want, and it's a good opportunity for me to say, well, I didn't know what I wanted either, but there's a good opportunity to have it.
Building up on that, Sal, right now, for better or worse, our country and probably all of the West is focused on identities. But there's a positive advantage to this in that you begin to identify underserved segments of the population. And you can begin to do something special for them.
Yep.
It's not an aggrievement issue. It's a positive opportunity to help people. And in the process to build a business. And if you could take an existing business that you already kind of know and use this approach of market segmentation, is what they teach you in the business school at Columbia, you again can have an interesting approach.
Absolutely.
So we're getting toward the end of our session, but I want to ask both of you because where did you get the capital to own your businesses? So Sal?
My husband and I had bought an apartment about 3 years ago. So we were able to get a home equity loan to help. So to start it off with. And yeah, I mean, that was it. I mean, we were fortunate.
Was that nerve-wracking?
It was nerve-wracking on two ways. Number one, she footed half the loan. So she did a personal loan. And it took me about 4 years to pay her, but also we had this loan off the apartment. And it was worrying me because my husband, this was the first apartment we ever bought. And we were partners, we weren't married. So I was concerned, like, what if something happens, if the business falls, we're gonna be homeless. And he kept on saying, what are you worried about? Don't worry. And I didn't.
Richard?
Well, I'm in the medical technology business. It's a little different. This is a very capital intensive business. Medical technology, you spend a lot of money way before you develop, you can commercialize a product. We've spent $7 million to date, of which $3 million has come from the federal government in terms of grants, and $4 million, and I'm the largest shareholder or investor in this, $4 million has come from private individuals, and I need to raise some more money. So I was successful at some other ventures. So I had a little bit of money to put in, so to speak. And I did what Sal did. I also took out a second mortgage on my home and things like that. So, but here's a caution I have about buying a business, and this is important. You really have to understand if you're doing a large investment into an existing business, you have to understand where that money is going. If it's just going to the existing owner, and that existing owner is going to disappear,
yep.
That's a whole different thing. And if the existing owner is going to stay financially involved, but you're taking over, but your money is going into the business.
Yes. And
that's
a perfect
really
point.
Oh, so the key here is you want money going into the business itself.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
The business wouldn't be for sale. The business wouldn't be for sale if everything was peachy keen.
Absolutely. And but in my point, my business was for sale because everything was peachy keen. She just didn't know how. Yeah, and she just was like, "It's time for me to move on." And the school needs new blood. I mean, everything she's done,
right?
The same procedures, the same way things were done even 10 years after I bought the school. It was COVID that made me say, I'm changing everything, changing the way I pay chefs, changing the way I do events. It was mind blowing, but because I had Arlene still on the payroll, because I was paying her off, she had a vested interest to make sure that the school was going to continue.
Right.
So it was a win-win.
And one additional issue here. So, let's say you want to go to some outside investors, whether they be friends and family or angel investors, and you put together a program to raise money from angel investors. I don't know how much it would be. That depends on the business. You need to think clearly how you're going to pay these people back. What kind of liquidity event will there be? Will you be paying them out of dividends and they're accepted? Most angel investors want you to sell the business for a liquidity event and pay them off in stock appreciation.
Yeah, because they need to know that exit strategy.
They need to know the exit strategy, and you have to have that before you go in.
So Sal, what's next for you with the business?
It's going to be interesting to see. I think right now I'm looking forward to 2022 when things start going back to normal. Chefs are not beholden to staying in their kitchens because they don't have staff to come and help them. And I just want to get back to what we were doing, but continue the virtual model, because the virtual model really is a lovely, lovely way of having people join the event at their own leisure. I mean, I have one in Peggy. Okay, I'm sorry.
And no, but it gets to Richard's point. It also allows you to have some different streams of income into your business.
100%. But also what I did was, I was beholden to doing 110, 120 classes a year and, having a schedule and deadlines. That's all gone because I just literally will turn around and you want to do a class? Great. Here's the dates open. I do an emailed newsletter. I've saved money on production, saved money on the design team, saved money on mailing. I just do it as they come. So if I want to take a week off, I take a week off.
And
It's
Richard,
a nice way of.
It's a nice way of living. Yes. So Richard, for Endomedix,
What's next?
what's next?
Well, I need to raise another $7 million. I am going to scale up clinical testing in animals and then get on to human clinical trials. And this is very exciting. This is exciting. We're going to be able to, just a little bit on the clinical side, we're going to be able to improve clinical outcomes for people in brain surgery, which is inherently dangerous. So we can, reduce the number of revisions, or we measure revisions as like having to do a redo surgery within 30 days. We're going to try to be contributing to a reduction in revision surgery and also lowering the costs of surgery. So we're kind of focused on that. And I need to get to the point where I do approximately 10 to 15 patients after I do all this testing. And then most likely a large company is going to make me a rather nice offer, or us, because I have shareholders, right?
Right.
I want to say one other thing about the exit strategy. Let's say you're doing a small business. We're not doing Endomedix and thinking about Bristol Myers Squibb or Johnson & Johnson. You're doing a smaller business. You can still license your knowledge and success. Let's say you're doing I'm using it, remember I said that before about a cosmetic business? Okay, you started a cosmetic business and it's very successful and you do a second site and that's also successful. And then you go to somebody in a different geographic area, New Jersey. I'm in the wilds of New Jersey. And you find people that want to start such a business and you license it to them. It's almost a franchise. You can sell your expertise, you can sell your success, and you can bring in some money that you would pay off your investors with. So there are a lot of ways. If you can't think of this naturally, find somebody who can and make them part of your team.
100%. 100%. That was my husband and others. Richard, you know what I want to suggest?
Yes.
You and I should do a cooking class together at the school with all your investors, and then you and I will do the food and help them get that 7 million.
There we go.
There
You can make sausage. I'll roll the meatballs.
I don't have the 7 million, but could I join for the food?
Of course.
Yeah, hey, and
Fun.
Stacey
Yes, sign
Sutter,
us
we'll
all
sign up to help. Yeah.
Now, I hate to cut you off. This has been such a fabulous conversation, and we are signing up for that.